Good evening. Welcome to the regular Board of Education meeting for Monday, June 23rd, 2025. Kristen, can we do a roll call, please?
Yep. Bridget?
Here.
Tracy?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Mark will be joining us virtually shortly. Brian?
Here.
Ann is absent tonight, and Aaron.
Here. I'll verify that we have a quorum present. Please rise. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brian, would you please read the school board mission statement?
Absolutely. Working together to ensure high levels of learning for all.
Thank you. Kristen, could you verify that public notice was given?
Public notice was given to the requesting news media. The agenda was posted in school district buildings and on the district website.
Are there any revisions to tonight's published agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Brian to publish or to approve the published agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We have no requests for public input on tonight's published agenda. And we'll move into our first recognition item, which is always a lot of fun. We have Zach and Luke here representing our coaches from the Onalaska High School boys and girls track and field athletes and talk about our Division I state track meet.
Yeah, so we want to get started first by just saying thank you guys for the pole vault pit this year. So that was a really big benefit for our program to have something new and safe for our kids. So just want to say thank you for that first from both of us. But then from the girls' side, it was awesome. Our girls really competed through a lot of adversity to really go through and perform at a really high level. We had a number of medalists this year, which was always super fun. We're going to hear from one of them here in a moment. And we just saw like our girls battle and fight through a lot of uncertainty at the end of the year to really come out and make the best of the end of their season. We ended up taking 14th, I think, at the state meet as one of the smallest D1 schools. So I'm really proud of them and everything that they've been able to put forth for us.
And our boys team had an awesome state meet. We I think scored over double the amount of points that we were supposed to. And part of that is from one of our young athletes here, Wilder. He'll get a chance to talk here in a little bit. And so we were hopeful that we were going to score high. And then everything just kind of started to unfold and our athletes started to perform. And we really feel like across the boys and girls, they really peaked at the right moment. And to score 34 team points and to take fourth place on the boys' side, we were really, really proud with their efforts. So we were absolutely excited. We feel like things are rolling in the right direction, and we're really excited for next year. You're going to come back, right? Yeah. Okay. So we're really, really pumped for that. So we'll turn it over to our athletes now. If you want to talk about your first state experience, both of them are freshmen, so it was awesome to make the D1 state meet as it is. So.
My name is Elon Gillis. I was a freshman, and I did the 4x2 and 4x4. And my experience was at the track meet, at the state. Yeah. I started off with just warming up and stuff, and it was really exciting because I was with all upperclassmen, and so just being out of my comfort zone and talking to people was really nice. And they're all super supportive of me. I'm just a little freshman, so I know nothing about this. So they're all really helping me and just talking to me as it is. And then so prelims we ended with 10th place, and which was really rough for us because you don't want to be last place for finals, but we pulled through and we pulled off a 6th place medaling. Hello. And then our 4x4, we also didn't think we were going to make finals, but we pulled off another win, which I split a 59, which is really good. And then we took 7th in our 4x4.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so my name is Wilder Birch. I'm also a freshman, and I did high jump. And leading up to the meet, I guess it didn't really come over me as being nervous until I got there and I saw the people. I think it really helped me that the meet was close at UWL, so I kind of like knew my way around and things like that. It was really fun competing against mostly older guys, besides one other freshman, but I beat him. I got third place overall, which is pretty good, and it was just a lot of fun, and there was a lot of people that were able to come watch too, which was nice.
Thank you all. Thank you guys for everything and all the support that you guys give us in all our academic and athletic endeavors. So thank you guys so much.
Well, I think what's always so impressive is not just the results, but the way the teams are, behaving, the sportsmanship that's demonstrated visibly, and I know that all comes from behind the scenes, from coaching, from families, from teamwork. So really appreciate that as much as anything else is just the spirit with which all of you represent Onalaska. Okay, we'll move into recognition of some donations. Janet?
We have 2 donations that we would like to recognize tonight. The cost of a field trip, approximately $250 for a summer school trip to Camp Decorah from Kelly Wild in memory of Nancy Volanek. And then $100 from Elke Flick, who's at Eagle Bluff. She's the lead there for the school district lunch fund. So 2 really cool recognitions that we want to give tonight.
Thanks, Janet. Always, so many different ways that, and Mark, if you could go on mute if you're not speaking, that'd be great. But just in ways that the community, that the school and our students are consistently recognized, in different manners. So thank you for that, Janet. We have now our informational discussion items, and we'll start. Is Bridget here? Hi, Bridget. We'll talk about our 2025 scholarships that are presented to our high school students, and following along, this is in enclosure 11.
I think I say this every year, but the time from last year's visit to this year's visit seems to go quicker at each year. But again, I think that if you were in the field house for graduation and saw those wonderful bleachers, I have to lead off with the fact that it just feels like Onalaska in that field house again. So again, awesome stuff going on. Just a few things that I want to, bring to everyone's attention in terms of just the scholarship awards and summary report would be just a reminder that we do report out on 3 different categories of scholarships, not just the scholarships that our OHS Scholarship Committee does take a look at criteria and then choose those students for, but we also have outside scholarships. Some of those outside agencies do use our scholarship application, so students really have a one-stop shop. They can really apply for a lot of different scholarships by just doing that one application. And we also have outside agencies that have their own, that again like to come in and make sure that students receive their due recognition. The third type of scholarship would be any post-secondary scholarships that students would be accepting by attending that university. The latter of those 2 are always self-reported. So again, we would have students probably maybe even learning in June or July that they've been named to a scholarship that aren't part of this report. And also we have students that elect not to report those out of just, again, their own free will, and that's what, again, we would respect their wishes on that too. A few years ago, we talked a little bit about a pretty steep decline in some of the scholarship areas. I can say that looking at the last 3 years, we've seen a stabilization of those numbers. When we're looking at percentages of classes, we're looking at about anywhere from 40 to 43% of the class applying for scholarships. And again, that percentage is lower than pre-2020. But again, we've had a pretty significant shift in that whole post-secondary post-secondary landscape. And that's nationwide, that's not just on Alaska. And so again, that's something that we continue to see stabilize. We had about a 12% drop in post-secondary enrollment immediately after graduation from 2021. In 2021, and again, that's nationwide, and we're creeping back up. Some are reporting about a 2.5% increase. So again, that being said, there's lots of different opportunities for kids. If you take a look at the awards section of the report, you will notice that we had over 190 students that were recognized that last day of school, the last day of seniors' school. And I thought that was pretty significant. In 2024, we started to recognize students who were enrolled in apprenticeships, mentorships, and also receiving any industry certifications. Again, those are another, different doors that have opened after 2020 that, again, are allowing our students to get that hands-on work experience and to get those industry credentials at the high school itself, and our instructors are teaching those. I was curious this year because I was a little overwhelmed when I saw the certificates coming in that I was going to have to make, but I thought it was really cool as well. 57% of our class, of the class of 2025, was recognized on their last day of school. That's a significant number. And so I again, kudos to everybody for really taking a look at, those academic, athletic, arts, and again, those industry awards too for students. So basically, that kind of summarizes a few key points from that report. Again, for informational purposes, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But otherwise, it's kind of been business as usual the last couple years again.
Does anyone have questions for Bridget? Well, this is always one of my favorite, end-of-year reports. It's always impressive to see. And I look forward to having you come back every year just because, I always know there's good news embedded in there. A lot of hard work goes into supporting all the students from staff around the district, but,
Absolutely.
the focal point and the coordination that you provide is really essential to that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We'll move into building projects update. Jared, want to kick us off?
Absolutely. And starting out, a great thing, we have power again at the high school after having that off the week of the 9th. So the big installation project went on schedule and they had it back up by Friday morning. You're seeing a lot of work being happening right now in the gym locker rooms. And then again, there's a lot of demolition happening in the lower level in the area where the business rooms are, some French rooms, as well as some special education rooms. And then beyond demoing, they're also framing those back up and preparing the hallway for the makeover. In the hallway, the old lockers are out. They're ready for the install as well as ready to move forward with flooring for the hallway. Jumping further ahead, keep sliding, please. If we keep going down, you're going to see that the bathrooms are being prepared for the concrete work. We're also seeing that the last portion of the tech ed area that had to be demolished in preparation for the music area has also been demolished. So that whole area is now focused entirely on the music area. And then we're almost done, Fowler and Hammer is almost done with exterior brick progress, and the last 3 rows of bleachers were added on to the north end of the gym in preparation for some renovations with the bleachers for later this summer. But a lot of projects happening, and thankfully a lot of the demo is done, which means the renovation can start.
Thanks. Move on to the middle school.
I think that we have a video.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Onalaska Middle School for another community update. Chris and I are excited to show you the progress here as we enter the last leg of the project, the final phase of the project. We have a lot going on between interior demolition, site improvements, and the start of build back, so there's a lot to cover. Let's hop in and see what we got going on. All right, we're here on the east side of the building. As you can see, we got the main entrance to the building in the background. We got the binder course sawed out to put our islands in. We put the binder course in as a temporary parking lot for the last year's school year, so We're just getting the islands put in now, and then we'll be putting the final lift of asphalt in. As we pan around here, you can see what's been our construction staging area here for the classroom addition is now getting graded out. We got some topsoil going in the islands and just getting a jump on exterior improvements as we begin the summer. All right, so we're here in the bike storage area on segment F. From the last update, we had Den's glass just getting finished up. Since then, we've got the air barrier on, and we have soffit panels going on. They look really sharp. Interstate Roofing's doing a great job on the install. Moving on to the south side of the building, you can see we are currently in the process of working on the bus drop-off. This is along Quincy Street, so getting formwork done for exterior concrete paving and sidewalks in preparation for asphalt going in for the new bus drop-off lane. All right, I apologize for the noise in here. So we're over in segment C. This is the final phase of the project. What will be at the end of the day will be the staff lounges, the tech ed department, and then the Boys and Girls Club areas. As you can see from the beginning of the shot, we have exterior framing going on. So we're just completing demo on the interior and getting build back on the exterior wall completed. But Strupp's been going to town here the past couple weeks since we completed asbestos abatement, getting everything gutted and demoed out. As you can see, we pan around behind us here. You can see we got Hengel working on underground plumbing, saw cuttings done. So just a lot of work taking place in this area as our final leg of the interior renovation. All right, just giving you another look here of the interior demo we have going on in segment C. What you're looking at specifically is Strupp's demoing the old locker room area. Just on the other side of the backhoe there is part of the locker rooms, and then on the other side will be the Boys and Girls Club. So that'll become a corridor when it's all said and done. All right, we're up on the north side of the site here. One of the pushes we've been trying to make here the past couple months is getting our exterior concrete paving in place for Minnesota, Wisconsin playground to come and start installing the playground equipment. As you can see, they're making good progress, here on the north side of the site. So up on the north side of the site, we're looking at the exterior of segment A. If you remember from our last update, we were just working on installing the architectural metal panels. That's been completed here since our last update, and then we kind of will venture into segment A interior. Specifically, this is going to be the orchestra room when it's all said and done. But as you can see, we got drywall up, we got taping and sanding going on. So making progress here up in segment A while we're waiting for demo in segment C to be completed and build back started. All right, well, that'll do it for this month's community update. We appreciate everybody tuning in and seeing the progress as it unfolds here at the Onalaska Middle School. We just want to take a moment to thank all of our trade partners, our foremen that are out here leading the charge on site, and Chris Anderson for really keeping everything moving at a steady pace and keeping us on track to turn over a high-quality building here at the end of this summer. We appreciate the partnership with the school district as always, and we appreciate the partnership with Vantage Architects. We've had a great team here throughout the project, and we're really looking forward to a strong finish and turnover to the Onalaska community. So long for now. We'll have further updates as we move through the summer. Thanks.
So I don't have too much to add. That was a pretty thorough update. A lot going on, and I think there's one thing I was going to add, but I was just going to say the part where they're demoing it's unrecognizable. It's crazy how unrecognizable it is. The part where it's all open, that was all the old 8th grade classrooms that we've been using all year and for 40, 50 years, and so they're really hitting it hard and trying to get it done for us before the start of the next year. So it's exciting progress. Yeah.
Anybody have questions for Jared or for Ben? Guys, thanks for the update. And we'll move into item 13, which is an update on Pillar 1. Fame.
Yeah. So I will present, and then Lori will take over for district, and then we'll pass it over to Kelly, and then wrap things up, and then each of our buildings will present their progress too. So we're reflecting on our annual goals and progress related to our strategic plan. And we'll start with looking at ELA and reading achievement, the highlighted portion. As I was looking through today, the number was incorrect, so I corrected it. I apologize. There's another correction that was made on the next slide as well. But I wanted to bring our attention to that because, of course, going through it, I'm like, how did I miss that? But when we look at ELA as a whole this year, our outcomes improved in all rights. When we look at student growth percentile ranks, we look at the way STAR progressed through the year as a prediction, and then of the actual performance on the state assessment, which we have much earlier than we've had in the past. Usually we have to wait till middle of July or August to get that information. So it's helpful, I think, to have it earlier to use as part of our reflection. It reflects the impact of the action steps we pursued this year. Literacy initiatives, including we had coaching happening, we had pilots of new materials, and systemic support for our youngest readers. So when we look at ELA achievement for our students who are in grades 4, 5, for STAR, our students who are in grades 3, 8 for forward, and then we also can reflect on early literacy, where our goal was to reduce the percentage of kindergarten through 3rd grade students who were scoring at the 25th percentile or below, and we reduced that as a district by 9%, which we're very proud of. We have noticed that there, as we move into math as well, that there's a mismatch between the forward and the STAR predictors, and so that's something that I think maybe STAR hasn't really caught up to the new benchmarks that the state has created. So I think going forward, something that we could consider is writing our goal around forward and still using STAR as that important leading indicator throughout the year. Because STAR helps us know what to do on a day-to-day basis, benchmarks, kind of like the pulse throughout the year, and forward is kind of the final portrait of the year as a whole. So that's something that we've been talking about. Going ahead to math, there's the correction. So math did go down on the forward by 5 percentage points, but STAR predicted a higher percentage. That's what I'm talking about. There's this mismatch, and I think we would want it to be a little bit closer to actual proficiency. We are at 65% proficiency on the forward, which does exceed where we want it to be with regard to STAR math. And again, we reflect on the targeted PD for teachers that we was very well received this year, and we saw incredible instructional moves happening across the board in our elementary schools and in our middle school. And there's a lot to celebrate. Instructional observations, and then really like honing in. We had a great meeting at the end of the year. We really want to hone in on more focused tier 2 and tier 3 interventions in the area of math. We have absolutely built an incredible system in reading that we can use to kind of inform our work in math. We also, both in reading and in math, look at our maintenance of at least 95% of students in grades 9 through 11 passing all their core ELA and their core math courses. And you can kind of see where we were at the end of last year, that we're a little bit higher at the end of this year for math, and just 1 percentage point lower than we were for, so all absolutely maintaining that above 95% of students. The next area that we look at are ELA and math growth. So we look at our students who are, by the state, there's a target group, a new target group of students every single year. That's the bottom 25th percent of the class. So it just goes from the lowest performing student on the ELA portion, lowest performing student on the math portion of our state assessments, and it grabs 25%. And we have a very ambitious goal with regard to our students who are in the target group, because we want 100% of them to be growing at that student growth percentile of 66 or higher, which is above average growth. We did not meet that, but I should say and we recognize that 70% of our students are now average or above average growth. It's not where we want to be. And that's part of like that tier 2 and tier 3 interventions piece, growing that. It is an ambitious goal, but we know that it's super important to know that our students who require the most support, that we're focusing on growth more than anything and how we can meet their needs so that they can continue progressing in their learning. So I think that that is kind of the first portion, and now Lori will pick it up with behavior and SEL.
Yes. So I'll speak about the goals around implementing our equitable multi-level systems of support for social emotional learning. This has been a part of Pillar 1 also for quite a while. And I think our action steps this second semester really gave us some movement in being able to maybe even put some closure to some of these goals that we had set out to do. One of the areas was implementing the Resilient Learner program, and we had hired Resilient Learner interventionists this year. Part of our goal was to measure impact. It's difficult to measure impact. There's some fluidity too of the students that are served. And so some of our numbers, it's hard to actually, and maybe that's an opportunity for us to grow and to learn more, is like, how are we tracking that maybe a little bit closer, especially around the tier 2 intervention, because there is some maybe in the moment tier 2 that happens that might not have gotten into our data. So some of our data, when you see in the larger report, isn't maybe as accurate as it could be. So we could do a better job. But I think the whole purpose of that was really to, are we getting a return on our investment in adding these positions and creating this program? And the overwhelming result is, yes, we are. And this has really been a good addition, especially at the elementary level. The middle school has had a teacher in that position, so we had a little bit of guidance there on developing and what it would look like at the middle school level. But that's been extremely beneficial, and a big celebration is part of our whole SEL system. It was a missing link that I think we really have done a nice job of filling for many students. One of the other action steps we focused on this whole year and continue to do it is creating the elementary alternative program for a handful of our most needy special education students. We are moving along with that. We have a teacher hired. We are finalizing the renovation plan and moving as quickly as we possibly can with the intent that we will be up and running by the beginning of the school year. So that's our goal. Even if we have to do a plan B to start, knowing that it will all be done eventually.
And Lori, is that in the Eagle Bluff school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yep, it is. It's exciting. The other thing that we worked on this semester was really articulating all of the levels of our SEL system. We go from universal, tier 1, tier 2, and then tier 3, and all the different pieces to that. It's hard to articulate in writing a plan like that because it's constantly changing. And as we get better at providing interventions or adding things or taking things away that we didn't find value in, that will constantly change that articulation in that document. So we do have a lot of things in place. It's really exciting when you do sit down and look at all of it, how many pieces we have put in place across the district. But that is a thing that it's hard to say we're done. I mean, we're done to reflect where we're at right now, but that is a constantly evolving document. And then I think the other big celebration and one of our goals and action steps was about, we have all students take an SEL screener. If you remember, students, it's a very quick screener, but they're rated quickly in a level of low risk, moderate risk, that's not the right word. And some risk, yeah. Low, some, and high. And we really focus on making sure that any student that is rated or rates themselves in that high-risk range, that our problem-solving teams at our buildings match those students up with the necessary supports that they need. And again, I think this has been systematized in our system, where we match 100% of those students, and maybe even more students. Maybe they didn't come up on the SABRS as our screening tool, but we know through the problem-solving process that there are students who need certain resources, and that's really, it's not about the screener as much as it is about making sure that our students all are connected with those supports that they need, so that their needs are met academically, social, emotionally, mental health, whatever that might be, and that we're talking about the outcomes of that process also. The next goal that I will speak around is our attendance goal. If you recall, we've come a long way in this. I looked back, I believe our baseline data was like 79% of students so our goal is to increase the percentage of students with under 10% of absences to 90%. It's a little wordy, but basically we're shooting for more kids in school more often. And even though it looks like we're pretty steady and maybe plateaued across here, what sometimes I think it doesn't always reflect are the efforts that have gone into making sure that we are targeting the students that are not in our 88%, and making sure we're connecting with other community resources and meeting with families, trying to take away barriers to attendance. A couple of things that probably impacted our results this year, or that we've been thinking about. One thing is, if you recall, we revised the attendance policy for the elementary level just this year, and it made it maybe more, I don't want to say punitive, but maybe more of a consequence to be absent from school at the elementary level. The difference where we differentiated a truancy versus a tardy, and we made that tighter, and that may have impacted this result. And maybe we'll see if we continue to collect this data, which I would assume we would, maybe we'll see that actually have a positive impact in the future. The other thing we've talked about is we have always historically included pre-K attendance in this data. Pre-K is not compulsory age. Parents, there's really not a whole lot of leverage around the attendance and the attendance policy that we can, other than promoting good habits and, starting young, but really pre-K is, like, if we were to take the pre-K attendance out of that, would it make a difference in our overall? And maybe we should focus more on those like compulsory attendance ages. So that's just something for us to think about. And then I'm going to pass the torch over to Kelly, and she's going to talk about the student engagement.
I'll be referencing enclosure 13, the student survey has the data. As you can see, just from our data, I think one of the major things to highlight is that our highest average scores for elementary, middle school, and high school was that students are feeling safe in our schools, which is just something to celebrate from this data, as well as the fact that students feel their teachers care about them and have high expectations for them. So really something to celebrate here. You can kind of see some connection between the elementary and middle school data, where it says one of our lower average scores, and one of the things that interferes with learning is students following the rules or distracting behaviors in class. When we had listening sessions with the students at the elementary school, so we went around and spoke with them, Dr. Finko and I did, we talked a little bit about just what are some of those behaviors, and you can see just from some of the listening session themes in the data that it's not major behaviors, it's more minor things like tappings of pencils or students blurting out in class. Those are the types of rules or behaviors that tend to be distracting in the classroom. At the high school, you can see some connections that that work-life balance that we know even as adults is something that we continue to learn how to manage and work around. So that's something that high school students are beginning to learn as they become seniors and are involved in so many great things at our schools. I think that was something that was really highlighted in the listening sessions that maybe didn't come across in the data that I put in there, but the students just spoke a lot about all of the fantastic opportunities we provide and how they want to be involved in so many things that it does just make it hard to balance those pieces. One thing I wanted to make note of is the participation status of Eagle Bluff. We did confirm with all of the fifth grade teachers that they gave the survey to all of their students, but you'll notice a lower participation rate. We're not sure where the error lied, whether it was in the survey submissions, but we didn't want to redo the survey, being that then that would skew the data and we would have students take it possibly twice. So we left it with a lower participation rate for Eagle Bluff. This is the first year that we have cohort data, so just noticing that data there. We have our fifth grade group, or our eighth grade group took it as fifth graders in 2022, and it's the first time we have data that we can compare the same group of students to how they filled it out as fifth graders versus eighth graders. And then, as I said, you know, the key takeaway really is our students are feeling safe and respected and cared for by the staff in our buildings, which is really a wonderful celebration. And it's just as highlighted by a quote as we were leaving the high school senior listening session. One of the high school students, I actually had her as a fifth grade student, and it was pretty neat to hear her say, she just said that she's so grateful to be a part of the School District of Onalaska, and just highlighted how wonderful teachers and classes and students and programs are, and that it's the best district in the area. What questions do you have for me around this data, if any?
Kelly, you,
Yeah.
thank you. You had touched on it a little bit. I was just clarifying when you were talking about the distracting behaviors that were reported by students. Was that at elementary and the middle school?
Yes.
Okay.
It was, yep, both of them reported the same thing, the tapping of pencils, blurting out in class, just more smaller scale annoyances almost, I think I would say.
Yep. And then the other question is actually for Fame. Do you want me to ask that now? Okay. So on your updated numbers, I just wanted to confirm that I'm reading it correctly. Are we seeing a decrease from the end of 24 to spring 25 then?
So there's a
on the
decrease-
actual forwards?
There's a decrease in forward for math. It went from 70 last year to 65% proficient this year. In ELA, it went up. Last year was 54%, it went up to 58%.
Got it. Thank you.
As a follow-up to Bridget's first point, so the causes almost feel like they're developmentally expected perhaps. Distracting behaviors become not getting enough sleep, nervous before tests becomes balancing everything. Is it insightful to compare the percentages of the students that are in 1, 2, and 3 rather than maybe rank ordering over time? Because I wonder if they're largely the same year to year as somebody matures from tapping pencils to balancing life. Would that be an insightful thing perhaps to see is how those percentages of students fluctuate within?
I think that would be really great to look at and see that data. I know that our guiding coalitions are going to be looking at the data at our data retreats this summer, so that would be something we could dig deeper into.
Yeah. Thank you. And I guess my only other question, the listening sessions, it's great to get such candid feedback that these students trust. I remember when I first got here rounding sessions, one of the things was said is to act on suggestions to show the person that they're listened to. And some of the things here, I mean, they're not low-hanging fruit, but, you know, things, suggested schedule changes, I mean, that's curious. Grading scale, work time during the school day. How do we message back that we've heard, and then rather, they're listening sessions, right, but the magic's in the doing. How do we message back that these things are being looked at and at least looked at to see if they're achievable?
That's a really great question. I know when we were sitting in the 8th grade listening session, Jana Yashinsky, she was there and had just was telling the 8th graders about some of the differences that the previous class had made and the changes that they had made over the course of the year, spoke about schedule changes maybe that took place. I know Lish too talked about in her listening session about adding extra snack in for students because they said they were hungry in the previous year. But I would wonder how we could share that more before those listening sessions come back around again. It's a great
Wonderful.
suggestion.
These are such good comments, and they seem deep and broad and wide. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
I just have one last question. Yeah. And you might not know the answer, and that's totally okay. Yeah. As far as the distractions go, did you guys by any chance like drill down into like, was it during testing or working or lessons? Like, is it something that like something as simple as like little earplugs to wear like while they're working on their work or during tests? Like, I just didn't know, like, did you guys drill down or not really?
It was a wide variety. We did ask students to share specific examples. So sometimes it would be during whole group class, the teacher would, be teaching and a student may shout out an answer, whereas other times students are working really loudly when they're working in partnerships or small groups, or during a quiet independent work time, students are tapping pencils or fidgeting with something. So it was really a very wide scale of distracting annoyance. Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for famed lawyer Lori or
I do have one more.
Kelly?
I'm curious how those focus groups are selected. How are the students chosen to participate?
I'll let the principals answer that.
I can share. Well, we do rounding throughout the year as well, and we do a randomizer, choosing kids for that, and then we give that to teachers and make sure that teachers feel like that's a student that will feel free to share or not be too shy or things like that. And we try to get a wide variety of backgrounds. And then for the sessions for the survey specifically, similar, but we talk with teachers about it who might have some strong feelings or ideas that they would feel comfortable sharing. We don't want to get to a focus group where the kids are just sitting there and they're not willing to share. So it's a little bit of both of those things where we're looking for a wide variety of backgrounds, kids who have some ideas that they maybe have shared to teachers before that they're willing to share. And we talk with the students about it ahead so that they know why they're coming to. They do like to say when they get into the room, though, am I in trouble? And we know that you know you're not in trouble. We want to hear your ideas, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Building level? We start with high school? Middle school?
Nope, elementary.
Okay.
Yep. I'm going to share about the academic achievement, and then we will each share a little bit and pass along. As you heard from FAME, our goals were written around using the STAR predictor score to predict the percentage of students who would be proficient on forward. And as she shared, we've noticed in the last couple of years that it hasn't been as tightly correlated as it has been in the past, as the state continues to renorm their standards and share that out with STAR, which is a national corporation. We're hoping that that catches up a little bit because it's made that predictability a little bit less effective for us, as you can see in the data. And as FAME shared, we'll talk about whether we want to use the forward data more as our predictor moving forward. We haven't usually had data as early as now to be able to use either. So hopefully that's something positive moving forward. This forward data that we're sharing the specifics at each elementary and that FAME shared district-wide, it may still change as it's not the final release of the data. It still goes through a little bit of a cleaning process to make sure there's no errors. So just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that in case something looks different in the future. And one note too of a difference from last year and from the beginning of this year is that the STAR reading portion includes students in grades 4 and 5 because our third graders, if you recall, were part of the Act 20, so we started using AIMSWeb as their benchmark instead of STAR. So that one is a little bit different than previous year's scores for the reading. And I'm going to share just our themes that we've seen from our data, but then also just a reminder that our guiding coalitions will be meeting this summer in our data retreats, and we'll work on actionable steps that we can take to make improvements on our proficiency and our growth for ELA and math. As far as ELA themes, our ELA proficiency went down a bit in the forward at Northern and at Eagle, but up a bit at Perch. And this is something that we're continuing to do work on our implementation of our phonics instruction in grades K through 3. And then, as you've heard a lot about over this year, our ELA resource that we're going to be implementing, we are looking ahead to that, giving us more consistency in our instruction and our rigor across the district. And we're hopeful that that will help with. We've had a lot of volatility in our scores where we have one grade that's doing really well, one grade that's not, and then we focus on that, and then that one goes up, and then others fall down. So we're just hoping to see a little bit more consistency across that. For example, my at Northern, the forward in reading was 47%, but my third grade one was 70% proficiency. So some grade levels were much, much higher, where we might have focused on third grade focused a lot on the fluency for their Act 20 and the reading plans. So the data we'll look at with our guiding coalitions to look grade by grade and across the building to see what we can make action steps from this. As far as our math achievement, that one is third grade through fifth grade because they didn't have a different benchmark in third grade for math. And our math proficiency went down a bit on forward at Eagle and Perch, but up a bit at Northern. So again, a little bit of volatility there, and some of that is we're continuing to work on our professional development with Shannon Keebler and with our math resource support. We focused heavily this year on the daily practices, engagement, and fluency around math. And next year, we're going to be focusing around the success criteria for students. So for teachers to know when they see this particular thing from a student, does that mean they need to continue in that instruction, or is that a time to intervene with a small group, or is that a time to extend the instruction on that particular standard? So that's something that we're hoping to really focus in more. But as Fame said, we saw some really awesome instructional moves around that math PD, but again, really focused around fluency and daily practices, where that was going to help some of our growth of our kids who weren't quite there yet. We're hoping that our theme for next year will help that tier 1 instruction for everybody. And then for our, excuse me, our growth, as Fame shared, this group is kind of always a little bit of a moving group, and maybe that's why they call it the target group. It's always moving. It's made up of 4th and 5th graders because it has to have students who've had 2 forward tests in order to show a growth. So 3rd graders are not included in this. And the goal is measured using STAR as that growth indicator. And again, it'll be interesting to see how that matches with the target group that's given to us by DPI based on the forward. We've noticed at Northern that the students that we are predicting to be in the target group sometimes don't end up in the target group, and then students that we don't have any idea that they would end up in the target group sometimes do. So that's something that I think we will continue to have conversations around. Is this the best way for us to measure this and use as a predictor or not? But what we saw, like Fame shared, we didn't quite get to where we wanted to in the goal, but we have some pretty nice groups of students, all 50% or more of them at average or above average. So that means that they're growing and closing their gaps. We would like to see more of the students closing their gaps, but we'll continue to work in our intervention systems on finding what's working for those students and what's not, and continuing to be nimble on that. As Lori shared earlier, sometimes we find things that work for one kid and not another, and this can be a pretty individualized process for the target group. So sometimes that takes us just a little bit of time to figure out what's going to work for them. But that's what we have been working on and where we're going with these ones. And then I will go ahead and turn it over to Abby next to talk about our early literacy. Oh, sure, go ahead.
So you had mentioned 5th grade versus 3rd grade. There was. Sorry. You had mentioned, was it 5th grade versus 3rd grade? There was the difference in the scoring, or 5th grade versus 4th grade? Or
I just shared specifically. I had one grade level.
Sorry. Yeah, you
one
said
grade level that was higher than. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you remind me what those grade levels were? You said.
I didn't say all of them. They're in the full. I think they're in the full.
Oh, okay.
But
I was just curious. I thought I had heard you say 5th grade versus 3rd grade, and I could be wrong. I was just curious if you feel like COVID played a role in those because of how, you know, the key years that they're learning those concepts in kindergarten, 1st grade, and then now they're in that, that grade level.
Yeah, something that we've shared in the last year or two, since we started implementing the Orton-Gillingham phonics instruction, which starts at kindergarten and goes through grade 3, we have all definitely noticed an increase in our students' ability when they have that phonics instruction to be able to read more fluently and improve their writing. So that's something that I'm very hopeful that we'll continue to see that move on through the forward testing years. This year's 3rd grade is the grade that got about a year and a half of phonics instruction. So next year's 3rd grade, when they come on board taking forward, they'll have about 2.5 years of that phonics instruction. So it'll be about 3 years until we have kids taking forward that have had the full gamut of that phonics instruction. But definitely, I think that is a factor to it, that the kids that currently are in this testing set were in 4th and 5th grade, they did not have that phonics instruction, and the instruction that they received in early literacy was virtual or half virtual.
Perfect, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
So
you're
it'll be
welcome.
interesting to see as that continues to move forward, those levels. So
Yeah,
thank you so
for
much,
sure.
guys.
Well, that is a really good feed into Abby's early literacy data, actually.
Nice segue, thank you. So the next goal area is around early literacy for elementary. And you'll remember that we revised this goal mid-year to account for the changes in assessments used for K-3 from the winter to spring assessment windows related to the requirements of Act 20. So instead of continuing with STAR early literacy and STAR reading assessments for K through 3, we used AIMS Plus to screen all of our students K through 3rd grade to check on their literacy skills. And then from there, if a student scored below the 25th percentile in a skill area specific to their grade level, we did a deeper dive with further assessments, or if they scored specific to their grade level. So for kindergarten, letter naming fluency or letter word sounds fluency, or 1st through 3rd grade oral reading fluency, if they scored below the 25th percentile, we did additional assessments. And then from there, we identified skill gaps based on that data, and then used that to inform the personal reading plan, and that's the requirement with Act 20. So the goal at each of our buildings was to decrease by 5% the percentage of students K through 3rd grade who were below the 25th percentile. So we're looking for a decrease in numbers. And essentially, our action steps were similar at each of our buildings around the creation and monitoring of our personal reading plans, essentially to provide the staff the support that they need to impact student learning. So what that looked like was plans developed by teams based on the data provided by these assessments to outline specific supports and tiered interventions. And then just ongoing collaboration with interventionists, with service providers, grade level teams, vertical teams, just sharing strategies and reviewing progress for students. So you can see the outcomes of that just based on winter and spring assessments. Through our PRPs, the students were provided targeted and explicit instruction in areas of need, and then progress monitored weekly to track their growth on skills. And then in the spring assessment window, gave them that same AIMS web assessment to just measure that progress from winter to spring. If a student scored below the 25th percentile, they were provided with summer skills practice recommendations and also information about summer school at the end of the year here. And like Lish said, we're going to continue to process our processes around early literacy through our guiding coalition meetings this summer, and then think about specific action steps for next year as this is newly implemented this year, and just what we've learned from winter to spring.
Abby, to what do you attribute that success? The implementation of the program and its collaborative nature? Is there another thing? What would you?
I think it's all of it all together. I think specifically the use of data to inform what we're doing with students has been very impactful. At kindergarten through 3rd grade, right, we had reading plans and just discussions around data, and then best practices for instruction. I think the other thing that was really wonderful for students, but also for teachers, was that ongoing progress monitoring with a wider range of students. And then we also shared that progress and that growth with students directly. So I think that all is very transparent, explicit, systematic, and made an impact.
And that success is achievable from a workload perspective with the teachers teachers and the administration?
I think we're working on that, yes. I think, when we do our rounding, when we ask if they have resources, oftentimes time comes up, and so there's only so many minutes in the student day, and so we want to really capitalize on that and make sure that we're doing all that we can to make that impact and growth for them.
Well, for sure that's seen, and knowing very much is done at the desk and the classroom level. That's just outstanding.
I would also maybe add our universal training for OG has had a large impact on that as well. So, but I do want to learn more from Perch about that very large decrease. So, so we can use our collaborative skills together on that too. So then I will take this final segment for elementary in terms of our at-risk attendance and student engagement. As was mentioned before, we did have 100% of our students being matched with supportive resources. I would just clarify too, we did give the Sabres in the fall and in the winter so that we did have an opportunity to analyze that and to respond to those. So we didn't wait till May to give the final screener. So I think that's pretty critical in terms of matching students, because those things can change pretty quickly over a semester. And then in terms of attendance, there was a mention too of possibly our change in policy making a little bit of a difference there. We did all see a little bit of a dip in the percentage of students under the 10% of absences. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that and do some more brainstorming around making sure that we get all of our students to school to do the learning that's so important throughout, and making sure that families do have whatever resources they need to make that happen as well. And then finally, the student engagement. We've heard a little bit already about the Life at School survey and the sort of a little bit of volatility maybe from year to year and group to group on that, but we will keep an eye on trends and how that looks. I don't know if there's any, I know we had the Eagle Bluff data issue there. I don't know if that had any impact on this or not, but I do know one of the things too I was wondering about is we did make a pretty concerted effort to highlight the themes, I think probably at all of our schools that came up through our student rounding sessions. And I wonder sometimes if too much of a focus on that now maybe made kids think a lot about what was happening. So either way, it's good information and it's really a good practice, I think, to get student voice involved in that. And I think that's been a really positive thing through our schools and will continue. So we'll keep watching those results as well and see if we can keep picking up on those themes and making changes that we need to along the way.
I have a quick question on the attendance. I'm going off of memory. Can you, anybody from elementary maybe can refresh the policy? As I understand it, is if they arrive more than 20 minutes late or leave more than 20 minutes before the end of the day, it counts as a half day absent. So have you had the experience of a parent saying, well, if my kid is going to leave at 2:45, it's going to count as a whole half day, so I'm just going to pull them at lunch. So they're actually missing more school. And I'm speaking from having that experience as a parent.
I have not had that.
Okay.
I have not either.
Okay.
It's maybe more the other end of things where
The
they try
late
to schedule
arrival.
things later or schedule things later in the day so that they're not missing.
And I only bring it up because I worry that the plan could backfire if people start, well, it's going to count as a half day anyway. I might as well keep them for a half day.
I think though, what, I guess I'll only speak for Northern, but what I've seen is that families that maybe were missing up to coming at 10:30, 11 o'clock are now coming closer to 9. So we're getting 2 more hours of instruction in with them, even though it's maybe still counting as a half day and it was only counting as a tardy before. So it has really helped me to be able to have the conversations with the families to help them understand you're missing 60 minutes of reading instruction and it's being detrimental to your child's reading achievement in this way. So the handfuls of families that I've had conversations where it has really affected them having a half day versus a tardy, it has helped them to get to school earlier and earlier so that they're missing less school.
I mean,
Ready?
I have to acknowledge that plus 1.29 on that student engagement survey from Irving Perch, so congratulations on that. I know Eagle Bluff, you said your data was a little off, but I mean, the other two schools both like met and exceeded that goal, so that's super impressive that you're doing that rounding and you're following through and making a difference, and it's showing. So thank you both.
And Todd, your final point lands with me about volatility year to year. It's easy to knee-jerk to any one certain thing,
Right.
but like having tactical patience and seeing things unfold over time. And so as we transition to middle school, I mean, it's just such phenomenal statistics, and not to react to any one single thing, but to see trends and within the band of excellence, and it certainly is.
And I would add that the survey is a starting point, and the focus groups then that come after that are really helpful, you know, for giving more context.
That's where we get more of the actionable.
All right. Well, quick fun fact related to those student groups. I'm told that at some student rounding a couple years ago, the kids asked for a new school, so I guess we follow through. Yes, we're working on it. So, middle school.
And they were asking for that when I was middle school.
Yeah.
Now they have to pick the
So, starting with ELA achievement, we were pleasantly surprised with the forward results going up. You know, for our ELA teachers, this year was pretty chaotic, to be honest, as we were trying to sample 3 different curriculums and trying to piece it all together. And a lot of days, they were just trying to know what they were working on that day. And so the star didn't move too much, but the forward definitely went up. And so very pleasantly surprised with that. And we feel very positive with the unanimous choice we kind of came to, our teachers did, in terms of the curriculum moving forward. And so we've got some training scheduled in August, and really looking forward to diving into that. And FAME is going to help us tackle grading policies and all sorts of other fun ELA stuff. And so that's exciting. A little surprised with the math as well. You can see our actual scores went down. The predicted score kind of stayed the same throughout the year. And this was a big surprise to us because our growth scores for math continued to jump up dramatically. The percentage of students meeting or achieving their individual growth goal is at about 70% school-wide, was about double what it was 2 years ago. And so our internal growth data is kind of off the charts, and so this was a bit of a shock to us. And so we'll continue to take time and to peel back that onion and see what we can figure out. A couple of things on the horizon, though, that we have been working on this year in preparation for next year are our math intervention process and our math acceleration process. We've done a lot of work this year unpacking those things and preparing for next year. And just a quick fact about some of those changes. This year, at the beginning of the year, we only had 9 sixth graders that were accelerated in math in some way. And this next year, because of some of the changes we're making to the course offerings and sequences, we'll have 37 to start the year. And now I think that we could have had something similar last year. It's just the process of getting it started, because there's a number of students that were in regular 6th grade math to start this year that are going to be challenged the next year in 7th. But after a bunch of conversations and reflection on the process, we wanted to challenge more students sooner. And so hopefully that'll help with continuing to see progress both in growth and in the actual achievement scores moving forward. For the growth of the target group, the numbers that you see on the screen are just the percentage of students in the above average growth. I apologize, I didn't have the others combined, but I have it right here in front of me. It's 65% average or above average for ELA. That's the whole school combined. And math is a little over 70% of students are at their average or above average, which fits with what I was saying before with our internal growth scores are really great. And that's just the target group. So the target group is kind of mirroring the school as a whole in terms of the percentage of students that are achieving average or above average growth. And again, unfortunately, in math, it didn't translate to the actual achievement on the forward that we would have hoped, but there's still some positives to focus on there.
I know we're teaching all the skills, but do you guys get to see a copy of what they're actually asking at all on those forward tests, or no?
No.
I was just curious.
We can access a report that breaks down by standard how many questions, for example, standard 7. I know that's not how they're labeled, but standard 7, there were 2 questions this year, whereas the year before there may have been 0, and the year before that there may have been 1. And so we can break that down, as well as, I believe, a depth of knowledge, 1, 2, or 3, in terms of how many questions are at what level of rigor, basically. And so we get a little bit of a report breaking that down, but we don't get to see the actual questions.
I was just
So,
curious if
yeah.
that could make a difference in those scores too, especially since, we're monitoring that internal growth, which is huge. I mean, not every kid's a great test taker, so
Right.
having that
Right.
other monitoring system is really important.
Right.
So thank you for all the work you guys do.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Those reports, they are very informative, but DPI does tend to change a little bit year to year which standards they focus in on, they don't want us teaching to the test for obvious reasons, right? And so it does vary a little bit year to year. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So the next slide, so for making sure that 100% of our students identified as high risk are connected with appropriate resources, we have a fantastic team at the middle school, and they are able to do that. And we kind of reflected from the fall to the spring in trying to make sure that we have a plan, which we now do, so that if students are absent on the day that we take that, we make sure that they make that up. Just want to make sure we're not missing anybody, and that we're kind of following them after that initial connection with resources to make sure we continue to kind of keep tabs on them for a little while. Our attendance, good progress there with attendance this year. We now have 90% of students attending 90% of the time or more. So we saw a decrease in the percentage of students who were considered absent or meeting that benchmark of absenteeism. In addition, our teams did a lot of great work a couple weeks ago, kind of a year-end wrap-up reflection session. And specific to attendance, one thing that we're going to focus on a little bit more next year is tardies. Tardies, a lot of times we realized in reflection, a lot of times we're focused on the kids who are missing days and days and days. But a lot of times those kids have some really extenuating circumstances. And so one thing, we're still going to track that and try to reach out and help those students. But something else that we're going to try to layer on to our systems next year is kind of more of that early indicators with the tardies. And when kids start racking up a lot of tardies to class, what's going on there? Because that means you're in the building, but just not in class. And so there really should be no excuse. So finally, the student engagement score unfortunately went down just a little bit. And so we've done some work, and it's similar to what Kelly shared before in terms of the things that are highest rated. And it's the student behaviors, and it is those types of things that we're continuing to focus on. And we're going to spend a lot of time in our August retreat trying to figure out what's next there. But one thing that we do know for sure is that we're hoping will help in this area is that we had, with the change to our schedule, one thing is that we're moving homeroom from the very beginning of the day to during the day. In addition to that, we're getting some training on the specific curriculum that we use, because homeroom is our core SEL instructional period. And we realized that because of staff turnover, about half of our staff had not had the training on how to deliver and implement the curriculum. And so we're going to rectify that with some more training for the whole staff in August, and moving that to a little bit later in the morning when kids are a little more awake, especially middle school students. And hopefully that'll have a positive impact on just that student engagement, student experience, and just really those SEL skills that sometimes we're lacking, which was, again, it was the lowest rated item on the survey. And so those are a few ideas that we have so far. We're going to continue to unpack it and see what else we can come up with. So.
Good work. Thank you. Team Purple.
Perfect. Look at that. I don't think it was even planned. Our first goal is focusing on students that, from an achievement standpoint, passing all core classes. And Fame had shared that from a ELA standpoint and math standpoint. This is one our guiding coalition will be looking at this summer to say, is there a different, better way that we can measure achievement? Because I suspect we're going to stay in that 92 to 95% range. And we've refined systems. We've tried to catch things earlier, which I think is the key with anything from school to medicine. But the catching things earlier works, but I don't know what we're going to see change here from a meaningful standpoint. This is really important from a standpoint of moving towards high school graduation, but does it do the best job capturing achievement? Probably not at this point, so that'll be a change. One piece with the achievement that, Tracy, you had asked about questions, one thing that's been very useful for our high school teams is that when we do the celebration of Learning Day for grades 9, 10, 11 in fall, we can see by specific student, this was the specific question, this is the choice. We can see across the grade. That's been very insightful because sometimes, all the times when our teams look at the data, they'll say, why did 60% of kids choose this wrong option? What in this question is tricky? What confused students when they should have gotten it right? So that has been really useful for us with the ACT suite at the high school level.
That's awesome. I'm glad you guys have that.
From a social emotional learning standpoint, if you saw the scorecard, you'd see that we had colored that yellow from a standpoint from an impact. Our challenge was we were trying to really correlate, not did we match every kid high risk with the appropriate intervention, but was it successful or not? What was that impact? You heard Lori mention earlier the challenge of measuring that impact. We tried to do that looking at attendance data. We tried to do that looking at grade data. We didn't see a correlation in any way, shape, or form to really show what the impact was of that. And I'm guessing the other buildings would echo this. The students in the high risk aren't always the students you would think would be in the high risk. And so there's students maybe who are in the top 5% of the class who are very heavily involved. There are students who are not. And so that's one that, again, we're still struggling to identify what is the impact. We've got the match done, but what's the impact of that match? From the current tech ed portion, you can see a substantial increase. I think if we went back to 2021-22, you would see there were approximately 4 or 5 students with credentials, up to 71 this year with maintaining as well as growing the assistant childcare, which Sue Brewer did a fabulous job with. And continuing to, we expect that number to grow next year also because we have students that earn credentials as sophomores who will now graduate next year who will have that, and it's not just a senior year piece with that. By the way, we found out last week that for all of the students from the class of 24, we earn approximately $680 from the state for that. So we anticipate earning somewhere in that neighborhood for the 71 students, but we won't know that until next May/June. I'll turn it over to Charlie.
Yeah, as you take a look at the attendance data there on the slides, certainly staying steady in terms of our progress. And as Lori mentioned earlier, you know, back as early as 22-23, we're at 78%. So I think we're getting a new foundation of kind of what's expected back to maybe where we should have been post-COVID. So a lot of help in making that progress, continuing to move forward. In addition to what Ben had said, I think there's more work to do in terms of the tardy piece and getting kids that are in the building to class on time and other measures in which we could improve that as well, but continuing to move that one forward, as stated here on the report, but also that timeliness to class and getting everyone there is only going to help their overall improvement. So a lot of positive trend points for attendance this year.
In terms of student engagement, you'll see we had a pretty big jump this year. Even our numbers of sports and music and our clubs increased. The addition of Engage really allowed students to find opportunities that they enjoy. And so kudos to our staff for buying into this. Extra thanks to Garrett Silker. He did a phenomenal job of undertaking a lot of things there and a lot of puzzle putting together, I think you could call it, to get everybody in there. So we're very happy with that number, and we obviously want to continue to see it improve, and we'll continue to look at ways how we can find or reach out to those other 20% to hopefully find something for them to be interested in and involved in as well.
The last piece is around that student engagement piece, and flat out we wanted to see more growth there. You know, Eric had asked a question earlier, how do you come back and talk about the themes? Because again, I think that's incredibly important. We had some great information from 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in fall. We responded to those. Unfortunately, their input wasn't measured by things on the survey. So for example, one of the most popular ones among seniors, having a different door open in the morning in cold weather, that's not a question on the student survey. If it was, I'm positive that answer would have gone up. One of the things, though, that our Guiding Coalition talked about in April or March when we first saw the results is when we talked about improving achievement like 3 years ago, we said we're going to improve achievement by doing this specifically and this. We haven't specifically said we're going to increase our life at school survey by doing this specific thing. So we've narrowed down to 2 or 3 areas, and now we're going to select one in August when we have our meeting to say this is the specific action we're going to have, which again, we would expect to lead to a better result than simply we're going to increase it, so.
And then we linked in the updated scorecard. I think in the attachment, it has the highlight, the bottom pieces that are updated. The top, we still need a little bit of time. Those aren't updated until a little bit later. But just to close out and then open it up for any questions, I think I heard over and over, like, as we move forward, it's about deepening our commitment to what's working and adjusting, refining the things where we're not seeing the impact that we want to. And you heard, I think almost every single principal talked about the summer work, the importance of that guiding coalition getting together, diving in, knowing what to grab and put, before that team of committed leaders in each of our buildings to project forward what our next steps are going to be to reach our goals.
If I could, Aaron, I'd like to share just a couple things. At the beginning of the Pillar 2 presentation on June 9th, I reflected what Casey from Studer used to say to this team. She'd say, 2 things are most important. What do you learn that's working? Fame mentioned that. And what does better look like? Fame mentioned it, and I have an opportunity to just say this, and I'm going to. The goals that are set using STAR aren't as helpful as one would hope they would be. And so while there was a revision in goals this year, don't be afraid to do that, even though it might yield a little different result and not give you the trend pattern that you'd love to see, because if it helps our building leaders and cabinet do the work that they need to do, that's just a good thing.
Yep.
It's a good thing. The other thing is, this strategic plan was not in place when Fran and I retired 5 years ago. And it's the best work that I've seen. The cabinet and building principals working together on the work. This is what makes the difference in kids wanting to come to school, learning at high levels. And on top of that, they're doing all the stuff that's required in the buildings and in the district on a minute-by-minute basis as well. So I just appreciate the work that they've done, the vision that they have, and the improvement that they'll have in mind when they go to their teams this summer. It's good stuff. So thanks, team. You've got a great team to do this work for you.
I think it's important to look at the work in whole as well. And there's a lot of really good work that went in together, to achieve just the results that we're looking at here, right? So, thank you all.
Tim, I have a question. So, I guess a thought first. So DPI, 4-star district, exceeds expectations, and Pillar 1's all about that, and it could be easy. We don't even mention that, and that's such a strength because that's really a thumbs up in the rearview mirror versus like a bench we sit on and point to the fact that we're in this. But so STAR, we've talked about how much that's off, and Ben's comment about peeling the onion. So the disparity, that's a gonculator, right, that does statistics, past performance. To what degree does the COVID shadow lifting play into this? Because if we look at the folks that Ben's getting, they missed fewer foundational years. Their grades 3 to 5 were intact. There's programmatic success to be sure, but maybe baseline recovery. They've also had more time to recover from before middle school, and they've had lower cumulative educational trauma. So the crest that he's seeing, as that shadow lifts, would we expect perhaps to see that crest continue across grades, do you think?
Yes. And I reflect on where we were 3 years ago, as we were really like digging ourselves out. It was a difficult time. Virtual learning works for some, but it doesn't work it doesn't work for all. And that, I mean, that was where we were. Many of our students that, you, kind of what you're referring to, missed some of those earliest years of learning the foundational aspects of math and reading. And I look at, like, now our commitment going forward, even before Act 20, we were training our teachers through OG. We knew that was that early intervention and early best instructional practices and universal learning for all was going to be how we bounced back. And I think what we're seeing now is a bounce back, and what's not represented, and Ben alluded to it, the growth of our students in both reading and math using, I mean, STAR doesn't do some things well, but it does help us know where growth is happening and where it's not. And then we can dig into why. Same with Ames Web and our diagnostic assessments. I feel like our system, as far as like what our assessments are telling us our students need, has never been better. And I think that we're going to see a continuation of improvement over time. I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. Yeah, I think correlation is not causation, but the fact that his folks coming in now have had the most intact key years, and I wonder if that's seen at the elementary school too, if it's just a recovery from that trough, and now that crest will kind of continue throughout. I wonder.
I just have a real quick question for Jason. You had mentioned the excellent numbers of student engagement. I'm just curious, was there a certain area that grew more? Clubs, music, athletics? Was there something that you noted?
I would say the main three that we usually focus on, those three you just mentioned, were equal growth.
Okay.
I do think our music program is starting to fully recover again from COVID. They definitely took a downslide.
Okay.
So that's increasing, and then, I mean, the number one increaser this year was definitely Engage.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Team, other questions? Thank you. We now have board policies. Before I hand it over to Roger, I'm going to ask, are there any requests for separate consideration of any of the
Aaron,
policies?
I'd like to request to remove board policies 1130, 3230, and 4230 from the first reading tonight to allow for additional consideration by the board policy committee.
I'll second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Eric, to remove policies 1130, 3230, and 4230 from first reading consideration for this evening. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Roger.
All right, thank you, Aaron. And board, you have, and it's an enclosure, kind of a table of sorts, spreadsheet that covers some of these. I want to thank building principals, directors for their input on these policies. This is another group, and here's the good news. When this is done and goes to a second reading, the first meeting in July, there's a whole nother group waiting for you to look over. But this is the work of the board, and I want to thank Tracy, Mark, and Eric for their committee work and continued committee work to review these and make sure that the board is operating with the help of Neola and the best possible standpoint they can. So the first group of policies they're going to just kind of take as a group, and Janet can respond if she wants, and committee members respond as you feel the need to do so. But these are UG Edgar, and that refers to Uniform Grant Guidance and Education Department General Administrative Regulations. These are, most all of them are required or mandatory, so we're recommending that those happen as written. Correct, Janet?
Correct, because that's what the auditors look to see, that we're in compliance with these things from a federal grant perspective.
Yeah. So not a lot of wiggle room there or suggestion for change. Any questions for those? If not, we'll move into the next set. of which there may be some. So the first one, and this is a new thing for me, wasn't here at the last meeting where Fran did it, wasn't here before. We had a different format and procedure, but just gonna go quickly through these. But if a member of the committee wants to speak, please, again, do so. Just some housekeeping changes in 1100, 1241, again, title, change title to reflect the name of the policy. 2210, I do want to note that it says that we removed P relating to multicultural education. That is, we're going to strike that and leave P in there, but it isn't in the policy that's noted that in this spreadsheet, so we're going to make sure that it is either located in the right one or that stays the way that is, and that'll be noted in the policy as we get ready for the second reading. 2270, just rights of parents in regards to items in the curriculum relating to religion. Start College Now, just information about costs in addition, and those are all in addition to tuition per statute. Moving on to the next page, and stop me if you want a question or comment. Again, student privacy and parental access to information in 2416. Added language about parents having the right to inspect surveys. We also had a good discussion in committee about, it used the word market, and we took that out of the title and removed a definition in that makes it more clear. 244001, summer school or interim school attendance, it's not recommended. The reason for that is that we have policy language dealing with attendance in summer school in our regular policy and handbooks, so that is not an additional policy that we're recommending. In 2464, advanced learning instruction, or used to be called gifted and talented, rewriting the language. The recommendation is to include that rewrite. There was a question, and a good one, about that the nature of that programming is for students in grades 3 through 12. And the question was, what about our K through 2 students who may exhibit the skills and aptitude to be challenged as well? I think it's important for the board and the community to know that things are in place to provide that kind of enrichment. Two things I'll name specifically. One is the community may have heard of WIN. We've mentioned EMLSS, Multi-Level Systems of Support, tonight as part of the Pillar 1 presentation. Those are systems that take a look at which students are struggling with the assessments and the learning targets, but also those who are exceeding those, and how we might meet those needs through groups, what I need groups, or other folks helping with students who are showing a real mastery of the curriculum. So it's not that it's not there. It is different, though, than it used to be when we had challenge teachers and the budget allowed for those things in our staffing. Staff gifts, 3214, clarifies what and when gifts can be accepted. Team Help Me, is that the one where we talked about the amount, or is that?
It is.
It is, okay, and an amount that's pretty small, because this initial policy was from 1996, and yet legal recommended that dollar amount stay static for a number of reasons, even though it's not a lot. 4124 is a practice that's been in place here that Sonia's instituted, but it's a notice of reasonable assurance of employment, and so that's something that policy is not going to be in place, but it's a practice that we involve. Staff gifts clarifies what and when gifts can be accepted, including support staff. I want to make mention that in our admin team meeting, someone asked the question, how can we be sure that staff know all of these policies that are really important to them, given the large digital policy book that exists from Neola. And Sonia has put together here's a list of maybe top 10 policies that are probably most applicable to people and questions that they might have, just to give them a little extra heads up about, here's what you need to know. Make sure you're aware of these, and building leaders will make sure that they do that as well. In 5113, open enrollment program, I want to make sure I'm getting this one right, but is this the one where we recommended not including siblings as part of the guarantee, or am I in the wrong one? Thank you, Lori, for helping me.
I don't believe that was part
Okay.
of the revision.
Okay.
I believe the part of the revision had to do with if a school board determined there was no space available for the next school year, that even if we had applications, say, for special education, that we still go through the process of making sure that we look at that, look at the IEPs, look at the needs, and really make a decision per student, not just a blanket statement that says we don't have any space available. We do that now, but we do not, I do not recall, I don't think we've ever had no space available in any programming. And so it's always what's in that IEP, and then looking at what was approved by the board, and then filling those spots in. So I believe that was the change that was being proposed.
You are right, Laura. Thank you for that reminder. And so a recommendation to accept that policy, but it's a practice that's already in place. Yeah. 5330, administration of medication emergency care. That's primarily about bronchodilators, which are inhalers, correct? Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yes. Adding this to the policy doesn't change our practice, because we are already doing this. So it actually matches what we're already doing. We have all staff trained in that medication administration, and then our nurses go around and do skill checks with both EpiPens and inhalers, and so it's just actually matching our practice. So we were it's one of those things you're like, oh yeah, probably should have been in there to begin with, but we are doing that. It matches what we're doing already. So.
And Laura, do you want to speak to 5341 too?
Sure, if I can.
Sorry. I don't have enough language to remind me what exactly that is, to rescind that.
This is to rescind because the language that's in here is in another policy. I don't know if it's in the one that we just looked at, the medication administration, or one of the other ones that governs health services. But it's, Neola was recommending to rescind it because the language is already included.
All right, thank you. 5512, use of tobacco and nicotine by students. Yes, and there was a change, had a quite lengthy conversation with Jared and Charlie about that. It's as students, if there's an issue with tobacco and nicotine, there will be disciplinary consequences for students who engage in that activity, but there's also support for those students to deal with any habitual issues that they have with those particular chemicals. So I think that's a good balance there. 5611, rescinding that, it's already in 5610. The number of these are financial coming up, and you can see Janet's recommending those. In 7440, facility security, there was a suggestion to remove the word shall and include may. And we talked about that a bit. Not every situation at every level would require a must call to law enforcement, so that's where the may comes in. Let's see. Yes and yes, you've already seen student acceptable use and safety, and that's included in handbooks. Smart sensor in 744002, things like, I'm blanking on the word, Charlie, but it's my age is showing. In the bathrooms, the vape detector. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, that's what smart sensoring equipment might be. to be able to help folks deal with that issue. Let's see.
I have a quick question before you
Yeah.
move on. I just don't know what it means. It says E-ray language. What is
Oh,
E-ray?
yes, thank you. So, you to qualify for E-rate, which is a rebate of sorts from the government in terms of helping you with technology. If you don't have a student technology acceptable use and safety policy in place, you cannot, you don't qualify for E-rate. Am I correct in that, Janet, or FAME? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, last page. We're almost there, folks. Let's see, just 8125. I'm not ringing a bell about that, but it's not recommended. Anyone have a recall on that? I do not. If someone's looking, I do on the no on the 8531 free and reduced price meals. There's two things. One is we do not participate in the milk program, but we are able to offer free milk free to free and reduced lunch students. The other thing is there's language in that policy that would, if a school reaches a certain threshold for free and reduced lunch numbers, the whole school could get free lunch. And that sounds like a great thing. But in talking to Carrie Johnson, what that would mean is that they don't reimburse at the level that would help keep our nutrition services solvent. So what they'd have to do is increase the price of lunches for every paying student. And that's just not a right thing. But every student who qualifies gets free or reduced lunch meals and milk. So that was, and transportation for language for students with IEP. That was a quick go over. Any questions that either I or preferably my colleagues can help with?
The only thing I would add quickly is that, I should have mentioned it before, but with those ones pulled for consideration, they touch ethics and they touch finance, so it's good to be deliberate and cautious with that. So that's what that is. And then I would just, Aaron, for us, maybe as a pin, staff gifts, good advice, of course, from our lawyers, but $25 in 1996, just with CPI, is $52 now. So we don't want to effectively cut by half what that is if we just keep current with what inflation is. So that's just a conversation to be had later, perhaps with intention.
I think there's some statute that's related to that as well, that we need to be
Absolutely.
researching and make sure that our policy is not in conflict with statute.
Yeah, it's a good team thing to do with intention.
I have a quick question on the gift one. So what's happening if a teacher gets a gift right now that's valued over the nominal? I mean,
Well, one, we don't know.
Right.
In most cases, there's not a receipt. In checking with WASB, part of the question is, or part of the concern is, when is that gift coming? For instance,
Right.
if there were to be a gift at first quarter.
Holiday,
then
yeah, versus a
and
holiday
that-
gift or an end of
is
year.
Is that gift representing a request for possibly preferential treatment? An end of the year gift, that's different, but you can, it's a difficult thing to manage and be accountable to and for. But
I don't
again,
wanna-
one of those things that's on Sonia's list of 10 things to be important, or be reminded that
Yeah,
are
because
important.
Bridget, to your point, I don't want to get too far ahead of the conversation, but if we expect teachers unfairly to, here's an artificially low dollar amount, and now I have this thing of do I accept or do I not, we're not setting them up for success probably, so.
Good question. Any others?
I think you got them all. The only other one you didn't technically mention was 7540.07, which says that students can't use their student email to sign up for social media
Thank you,
accounts.
yeah.
So no Roblox or Facebook or any of that with their student emails.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me bumble through this. It is first reading, and then the committee will take a look at, as was mentioned, the ethics and conflict of interest policy, maybe as part of your next whole group of policies, just to put them all together.
If there's any other questions or individual comments, feel free to reach out to the committee members with those. Thank you, Roger. And to the committee for, I remember how full those meetings can be. So Mark, Eric, and Tracy, thank you.
I think they're a good time.
We have, next is action item related to item 15, which is policy 5411.
There are no, I have heard no recommended changes. No recommended changes. Fame, you?
Okay, there's no recommended changes to that policy after first reading. This is on the agenda for board approval.
I'll make a motion to approve board policy 5411, third grade promotion and retention for at-risk students that's outlined in enclosure 15.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Bridget to approve policy 5411 as detailed in enclosure 15. Are there any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Again, to the committee, and Roger, thank you for your work on that.
And Fame, thank you.
Yeah, Fame as well. And next, Dependable Solutions Contract. Janet.
This is a contract that comes before you each year. And just a reminder on how we're structured here. We have 3 technicians on, that are school district of Onalaska employees. And then for a number of years now, the leadership of that team and additional support has been contracted out to Dependable Solutions. It's been something that, just looking at that organizational structure, has been something that's been in our strategic plan for 2 years now. It would be wonderful to have that leadership in-house, yet at the same time, there's times with this contract that it's very nice to be able to have, especially at crunch time, that we have the extra technicians that we have on board to help us out deploy, especially at testing time and crunch times like that. It's the extra hands on deck are really helpful. The contract that is before you this evening is the exact same as last year, no increase in price for and no decrease in services provided. So I would recommend that we renew for the 25-26 school year.
I have just 2 questions. I saw there's no auto renew, right? Just confirming that. And that, but then there's also a 60, do we have to give a 60-day written notice if we're not renewing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's staffing involved, so,
Yeah.
you know, if something were to happen that we wouldn't renew, I would want to give much more than that as
Sure.
advance notice.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Dependable Solutions for the district, for the 25-26 school year as outlined by Janet in agenda item 16.
Second.
Motion by Eric, seconded by Brian to approve the Dependable Solutions contract for the 2025-26 school year as outlined by Janet and included in enclosure 16. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Janet. Next up, we have Jared for a second reading on the 25-26 high school student handbook.
No changes, but one clarification on page 17 with the possibility of random testing. If you approve the handbook tonight with this, you are not saying carte blanche, you can move forward with this. What this means is that there's a possibility for us to move forward as a district. Those steps would involve working with our legal counsel, with our liability coverage. We've reached out already to other high schools who have done this, and the purpose in every way, shape, or form is not to catch kids. The purpose is to help kids make the right decisions and, simply put, prevent kids from making mistakes to begin with. It's kind of like the police officer being in a visible spot to slow down traffic versus having a speed gun tucked off the highway. And if you think about it, if 95% of the kids are doing the right thing, at a dance with, say, 700 kids, that leaves about 35. And so when you think about wanting to make kids make good choices, this is what this is about. If you approve this moving forward, what we would be doing is working first off with Ben Barton coming in to make sure he's on board. But then from there, from a board level, I would anticipate policy 5771 coming to you for possible revision. That's one dealing with searches, which is where random testing would fall under. Random testing specifically would be for alcohol. There is no other fast test to do for anything else beyond that. Any other schools that we've talked to specifically look at that from an alcohol standpoint.
I think it's a helpful update, and just your reflection on how, in theory, how you go about it, right? And the next steps following, so.
I should also mention, we're specifically looking at this from a dance standpoint, not from other school activities, so.
I'll make a motion to approve the high school student handbook for the 25-26 school year as outlined in enclosure 17 and presented by Jared.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Bridget to approve the 2025-26 high school student handbook as detailed by Jared and included in enclosure 17. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. That carries. Thank you all for your work on that. And now we turn to Janet for the 2024-25 budget amendment.
We're asking you to take action on the last budget amendment for the 24-25 school year. The document that's projected on the screen right now is the Department of Public Instruction's format for making these adjustments. It's hard to follow. I think the better document is actually the second document that's attached. That gives the detail, but the document that's on your screen right now is the one that I'll ask that you take action on. When you look at the June changes in that second document, as you look through the different funds, you're only seeing those that have changes for this period. And then looking at Fund 10, the changes that we have there are to cover some expenses. So at this time of year, like we're basically looking at the end of the year, we're in areas that we're looking like we're spending more than we had anticipated, and then areas that we are expending less than we anticipated, and basically doing movement between. You can look at the bottom line is not changing, it's just moving within categories. In the areas that we are we have more expenditures than we anticipated beginning is in other instruction, and you heard the thank you tonight for the pole vault system that you approved earlier. So this is adjusting the budget to catch up with that pole vault that we purchased. And then also in other support services, and that is for some consultant work. And both, with this one, we have taken the move towards a new student information system, because when we have expenses that are more than we are comfortable with, we're looking at what are we gonna do differently moving forward to make sure that we're bringing those expenditures down. And that's what we're doing. I'd love to be able to do this starting July 1, but making a change as large as this takes time. And so we need to do it right and take the time to get our staff all on board. But we've had bigger expenditures here than we're comfortable with consultants helping us with our current information system, which is very highly specialized and coded in a way that's just not easy for others to be able to pick up on quickly. And then you can see there's a small transfer to Fund 99. Fund 99 again is our co-op fund, so just truing it up at the end of the year for all of those sports where we have got co-ops that we're the fiscal agent for. That's what Fund 99 is. Then looking in Fund 21, that is just adjusting our changes. This is our gifts area, so adjusting those to be more trued up with where our gifts actually came in for the year. And then looking at Fund 27, our adjustment there, we've had an adjustment, again, that we're taking action to make sure that's, hopefully not repeated in the future. And we've had more off-district placements for special education students, and we just approved the Honor Pals program. And then you'll see a significant increase in instruction because we've had subs in helping us out with the students that we aren't able to get placed on. So we feel like next year having the Honor Pals program and having an environment that's designed for the students that have these more specialized needs that aren't just succeeding in the regular classroom and needing a different environment. One size does not fit for all. And this is, in your mission statement, you talk about all students. This Honor Pals is really a true reflection of that. So we're excited to see, how that plays out moving forward. Looking at the rest of them, they're really pretty minor adjustments. In Fund 39, just increasing there for additional interest that we have earned, and then a small expenditure on some agent fees, and then Fund 80, just a reclassification to cover some expenditures in crossing guards, and then finally in Fund 99, we talked about that earlier, truing that up to our actual cooperative. So that's the detail behind it, and then the first attachment that's on the screen is all of the numbers, rows and columns of numbers to align with those items.
Anyone have any questions for Janet? Okay. This does require board approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the 24-25 budget amendment. What?
26, right?
What?
That's the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
24-25, yes. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the 24-25 budget amendment as outlined by Janet and detailed in enclosure 18, 24-25 amendment, and enclosure 18, 24-25 detail.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Bridget, to approve the 2024-25 budget amendment as detailed by Janet and outlined in enclosure 18 amendment and 18 detail. Are there any further questions? Take a roll call vote on this, please.
Tracy?
Yes.
Bridget? Yes. Brian?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes. Janet, thank you for your work on that. And we'll stay with you.
All right.
To talk about the 2025-26 preliminary budget.
And on the screen is the item that we'll ask you to take action on, the preliminary 25-26 budget, again, presented in the DPI recommended format. And then also the first attachment is a presentation. I'm not going to go through that presentation tonight unless you would like me to. It is so preliminary. The new state budget is starting in a little over a week, and we have no idea where we're going to end up. I mean, as I said, it's kind of like fire and then we'll aim later. And it's just the way that it works in school districts. Our fiscal year starts on July 1. In state budget years, hopefully by July 1 or before that, so that I can get it ready for you. We know that we've got a state budget. We don't know that. The governor's budget talked about this being the year of the kid, and what we're seeing so far in joint finance is really dismal. So hopefully that changes, and we get closer to a more supportive budget for students, but we'll see where it ends up. But what we'll be doing on October 27th is when we will adopt our original budget for this next year. And in preparation for that, on October 13th, we'll have a budget hearing. So then on September 22nd, we'll be asking you to adopt an updated preliminary budget to take to the budget hearing. And again, at that point in time, it won't be finalized because we won't have our student enrollment numbers, we won't have equalized value, we won't have our state aid. So it'll still be tentative, but it'll be better than what we have today. Because as we go through the summer, we'll just continue to get better and better data to better build the budget to get it more accurate, but we really don't have everything nailed down until mid to late October.
Any question?
Any questions for
Can
Jen?
I just add one more thing? The budget that's presented tonight is a conservative budget. So we estimated revenue coming in very conservatively. You can see like with our state equalization aid, it's a 16 million less than we had this year. But when you look at a year beyond that and we're a declining enrollment district, it looks, you know, hopefully it's much higher than that, but we're conservative on both the revenue coming in and then trying to be somewhat more generous on what we think the expenditures will be.
I'll make a motion to approve the 25-26 preliminary budget approval, as outlined by Janet and detailed in enclosure 19, 25-26 presentation, and enclosure 19, 25-26 preliminary budget.
Second.
Motion by Tracy, seconded by Brian to approve the preliminary 2025-26 budget as detailed by Janet and outlined. I believe we're just approving the one document, right? The enclosure 19, 2025-26 preliminary budget. Are there any further questions? And Kristen, I'll ask for a roll call here as well.
Brian?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes. Janet, thank you for your work on that. Okay, we'll move to FAME for a discussion on our curricular resource adoption for ELA.
So
Happy news, I think.
What?
Some happy news. Yeah.
Finally. No, not in, I was going to say finally, it has been a year of like pilots and trying things out. And like this was an integral part of our strategic plan. And it is not easy to do something different than the rest of your team at times. But both of all the companies we worked with said over and over, and I think I've mentioned this, the professionalism and dedication of our staff does not go unnoticed. And they're like, we've never worked with a school district where teachers are like diving in and they're excited and they're committed and they're asking questions and they're trying it out. So that's just like a huge celebration, and it's great to finally bring it to you all as far as recommendation is concerned. So we're bringing the purchase and adoption of a new ELA curricular resource for grades K-8. The request, we bring this before the board for two reasons. The first is the total cost exceeds $100,000, and it also constitutes the adoption of a core instructional resource, which requires board approval per district policy. So what's included in the purchase? For grades 3 through 8, this includes 6 years of student consumables, full digital access for teachers and students, and all necessary teacher and classroom materials needed to execute the curriculum. In grades K2, we're starting with 1 year of student consumables and student digital access in order to evaluate the need for that in the long term, because when students are younger, we don't put that, they're not on their computers as much, and we do that intentionally. It's about exposure. It doesn't mean that teachers won't have access to these things to be able to print and hand out, but what we want to assess is, do we need in grades K2 all of the student consumables that come with the program? We want to be fiscally responsible and responsive to what's needed at that level. It does include 6 years of teacher access and all the same classroom materials as the other grades. It includes professional development. So a portion of the purchase in each quote is dedicated to ongoing professional development, which includes launch training for each program, in-person coaching, and then other training and support. They call them different things depending on the company, so strengthen or things like that throughout the school year, which we have scheduled on professional development days. The in-person coaching piece has been like a really critical ask of our teachers. They want to see it modeled. They want to have somebody who's an expert in the buildings with students so they can share that. So that was a really important part of our back and forth. So then we look at the curriculum selection and policy alignment. So the adoption process followed the district policy and selection guidelines, including we looked at suitability for students, and that's why pilots are so critically important. And we did that in every grade, K through 8. Teachers then used a standards-based rubric. We used it at the beginning of the process. We used it at the end of the process to gauge that suitability and grade level rigor, as well as engagement and alignment to grade level standards. And then we really dive into freedom from bias. And we use, we have a district bias checklist. And really when we look at Amplify CKLA as the K-5 program, My Perspectives by Savas is the 6-8 program. The CKLA's most recent edition, so the 3rd edition, the one that we're adopting, has been revised to remove or adjust previously controversial units. It's been acknowledged that there is some controversial units in the 1st and 2nd editions that are not present in the 3rd edition, which is wonderful. CKLA, looking at that first, developmentally appropriate. The materials are tailored for young learners with age-appropriate language, diverse representation, and culturally responsive topics. And then as far as educator feedback, in local pilot reviews, no bias concerns were raised by K-5 teaching staff during the rubric evaluation. Then when we were looking at inclusivity and fairness across the board. For My Perspectives, that's the 6-8 program. It meets expectations for text quality, for knowledge building, for usability, and includes supports for all learners. And the program itself is actually structured around an anti-bias framework, and it uses that as to frame in taking perspectives as students are working through that program and that literature. When we look at teacher insights and considerations, teachers commented on the rich diversity of texts and noted that My Perspective supports meaningful conversations about identity and justice. And then the newest version that we're adopting includes more contemporary and relevant texts and improved platforms. So both of these programs, we're getting the newest version, we're getting the most updated version, and the one that our teachers have experienced and are excited about. For curriculum alignment, resources, we look across the board. They align to our essential ELA standards, and they're designed to build a strong, coherent foundation in literacy that spans grade levels going across. When we look at the community standards, again, kind of going back to the revision, we did notice that the 3rd editions revised or removed those previously controversial units. The selection process, I mentioned we did use standards-based rubrics. K-5, we had 1 pilot teacher per grade level in each building, and they piloted both programs, including CKLA. In grades 6-8, all ELA teachers piloted Amplify in semester 1, and then additional programs being My Perspectives and Arts and Letters were also explored during the 2nd semester. 6-8 team was 100% unanimous consensus on them being in support of the My Perspectives, of bringing that to you. And then there was a clear consensus and direction for grades K-5 as well. I'm gonna pause, because then I'll just dive into the cost, to kind of wrap up those elements that are in our policy that we take a really close look at with adoption.
I know that a ton of work went into this, and so I appreciate all of the time and effort that the teachers put in, switching up their learning to accommodate these different things and check them out. I think an outsider would ask, how will they work together as far as utilizing one resource K through 5 and then switching to another one for 6 to 8? Is there continuity? How will that work together, as one probably would continue with their same methodology? So
Because both programs are very aligned to the standards that govern all of the instruction in every grade level, CKLA is more of an elementary program. When the middle school, I will say, so the middle school, the other portion of CKLA is called Amplify CKLA, and then it's just Amplify ELA for middle school. We piloted that for half of a year. One of the things our teachers said was the amount of screen time that it involved middle school students. And it was interesting, as we were going through the pilot, that was not the experience of our CKLA pilot teachers, but the middle school ELA teachers were like, they didn't feel good about it. They didn't feel good about how much kids were being asked to be on their screens, which was why we wanted to explore other options. My perspectives, they felt, was the right balance. And so we look at CKLA, it's kind of like that foundational skills, the beginning, and then it becomes a little bit more sophisticated in grades 3-5, and then my perspectives kind of takes it and allows literature and informational text to bloom from there. So what we've noticed is that there is a really wonderful continuity, even though they're not the same program. And that to try to pick the same program for continuity's sake might have meant that we sacrifice some of the values that we have in the middle school, as far as like, how much should kids be on Chromebooks? How much should they be reading text in front of them? So lots of consideration went into that.
And I think it's important for people to hear that, so I really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Thank you for asking.
My question's about cost, so if you're gonna get to it, feel free to put it off. But I'm just curious, since we're only doing 1 year of the K2 consumables, do you have any idea roughly what that costs if we decide to add it in for year 2, year 3, what that would look like?
I can get the exact cost for you. I did not break that part down. Is it okay if I put that in the board memo?
Yeah.
It will be, I don't want to say without like really diving in and knowing for sure. But depending on what we decide to do, there will be an additional cost. It'll be less than what we're purchasing for the 6 years, because it'll be a 5-year.
Sure.
But we will have put a little bit in for next year. So I would want to dig into it before
That's perfectly fine, thank you.
I'll write myself a note about that. Okay, so with that, sticker price, right? Like the price that's on the car in the lot, right? Is $842,955. We, in our strategic plan, said that we anticipated spending up to $900,000. And that's the beginning, okay? So then the back and forth kind of starts. You do multiple years. You kind of like, you're looking at what elements do we need, what elements do we not. So all told, for CKLA Amplify, it is going to be, my computer died. Can I look at the agenda? Yeah. So it will be $390,690.40. Amplify is also allowing us to split some of the payment to alleviate where that's landing. So for anything we're receiving this year, training, materials, consumables, all of that we will use next year, like the physical aspect of the program, we would pay this year $313,554.40. They are then allowing us to kick forward like the digital, like the access for teachers, the access for students, kick $77,136 to the next fiscal year to alleviate that impact a little bit. So they were wonderful to work with for that purpose. For CK, or for My Perspectives by Savas, the total cost is $162,280.31. So the total that we would be spending for both programs over the course of 2 fiscal years is $552,970, which is a really favorable number and further away from $900,000, which is good. That's an okay thing, and something to celebrate. So both programs, we look at cost and durability, so that's the cost, and then the materials are fed digitally. Anytime there are updates, we get those updates, right? So these are growing programs, they're continuously improving programs, so that kind of allows us some long-term sustainability as well. So that is that. I think I touched on everything, but if you have questions, I'd be willing to dive in a little bit further.
Any costs for updates? Any costs for updates?
Cost for updates, like if
When they update, is there a cost for that?
no, like digitally, they update all the time. That gets automatically delivered. Like, let's say we're purchasing the 3rd edition. If in 2 years they come out with a 4th edition, there would be an additional cost to re-up. But the way, talking with the publisher for CKLA and for Savas, they just made some really recent updates, and so another edition is maybe not on the horizon because both of them are brand new.
Will it be that cost every 5 to 6 years then?
It could be. It could be. And I think, when we get back around in the cycle of looking at whether this is meeting our instructional needs and our goals, then we would start the process all over again. And be able to see after 6 years, is this getting us the results that we're looking for? Is it meeting students' needs? Is it allowing our teachers to do their best work with students? And that will show in results. And if it doesn't, we go back to the drawing board after a lot can change in 6 years, and we reassess. Mm-hmm.
I'll make a motion for the adoption of the ELA Curricular Resources Amplify CKLA for grades K-5 at a cost of $390,690.40, and Savas My Perspectives for grades 6 through 8 at a cost of $162,280.31. As outlined by FAME.
Second.
Okay, motion from Bridget, seconded by Tracy, to adopt the ELA Curricular Resources Amplify CKLA for grades K through 5 at a cost of $390,690.40. And Savas My Perspectives for grades 6 through 8 at a cost of $162,280.31.
Can we do a roll call?
We can. Do we have any further questions? Roll call, please.
Brian.
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
Tracy.
Yes.
And Aaron.
Yes. As approved. And thank you, FAME, and a whole team of people that
Thank you.
brought us to this, so appreciate that. Are there any requests to remove items from the personnel report for separate consideration? Hearing none. Sonia.
Thank you. We have one new teacher that we are bringing to the board, a Phi Ed teacher for the middle school. Travis Van Hayden will start. He is coming from Osseo Fairchild, but is from this area, so kind of coming back home for him. We continue to fill some of our custodial needs with Asher Anthos. And then kudos to Kelly McMahon and Charlie for helping us with all the summer school contracts. The extra exhibit in there is all of the July for K-8. And then also for Jason on filling in on for all the fall co-curricular. You'll see many coaches that, many hands help with this. And so we'll have a few more coming up, but this is the majority of them.
Team, any questions for Sonia?
I make a motion to approve the personnel report as provided by Sonia and include 21 personnel.
I'll second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Eric, to approve the personnel report as presented by Sonia and detailed in enclosure 21 personnel report and 21 summer school. Are there any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Sonia, thank you. Are there any requests to remove items for separate consideration from the consent agenda?
Seeing none, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Brian, seconded by Eric, to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you for that. And then, before we have no further business, I told you this is coming, Roger, right? But, you know, again, you know, I reflect on like how much I've learned sitting, well, not sitting next to you that often here, but the interactions that we had. I mean, I think the love that you exemplify for this district, for this community, and for the work that this team does is just so apparent in every interaction that I've had with you. Just so thankful that you've been willing to come back and spend this time with us. It's been amazing to be able to work with you, and thank you very much for the time.
Thanks to all of you for the ask, and good to reconnect and connect anew with members of this team and the board. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And with that, we have no further business.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion from Brian, seconded by Tracy, to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Has it ever
Thank you all.
happened?